And you did. I mean, thankfully, you left it at like a pretty good point where you could easily retcon into the new style, and you really retcon two styles. First, it switches from the drawings to like it kind of almost looks like computer artwork there, and then on the next page, it starts with the kind of classic Archie designs of Jeffrey St. John and this. I think it's a cocker spaniel. Is that what it is? I don't know what that lady is, but
Yeah,
you know,
Ensign Brownie is, yes, it was a cocker spaniel. If you want,
okay, so I all right, so I got that correct. But it starts
yes,
with the Archie designs, then you see like the reboot thing continue, and then you get into the new, I would say, more mature designs that the rest of the book takes
right,
place.
right. I wanted the change in design to be part of the storytelling, to make it an easier transition for people. Here they've gone through Mobius 25 years later, and here's what the characters look like. And I've introduced this new character, Override. Okay. And this character will have a bit much bigger impact as the story unfolds. Um, but this character was going to be my way of establishing it's still the same universe, but he's capable of making, material changes.
Mm.
My cat is in the background here. She, so
I,
you have
I've,
to.
got, I've got a pug and a kitty myself, and I hope that they are behaving themselves as mommies
They're
at
cats. I mean, they're cats.
work. Well, when they have themselves to play around with, they tend to be pretty good. So yeah, so I thought that was like a really good way to kind of update it and bring it. Because I also have to remember, like, I think when you and I first met in that photo, it was like 2004 or something like that, and it's like, well, now it's 2024, and it's like, oh geez, like we're like pretty much living up to the name of the book now. Mobius 25 years in the future. Had you just waited 5 more years, that would have been poetic justice. And yes, we are all Beatles fans, I believe. It's like any band whose worst album is Let It Be, got to be a good band.
Well, I followed them ever since they, came out on the Ed Sullivan Show. So I mean,
Well, I missed that. I don't think I was a thought in anyone's mind at that point. Now, even though I don't I don't I'm going to ask a question, even though I wasn't originally going to, just because I know some people are going to ask. So some people are asking how this is legal. Now, you don't have to go into too much detail. I'm assuming it is.
no, it is perfectly. First of all,
Yeah.
it's perfectly legal. It's
Okay.
perfectly legal. Okay. I first of all, I own the copyrights to all the stories that were previously published.
Mhm.
Okay. Second of all, think of it as like music. Okay. A group records a song, somebody else records a song. I mean, the same song. All right. Or say, like, you have a band splits up. One member, co-wrote the song with another member, and they're both performing their own version. Okay. What it comes down to, as long as both parties get paid, okay, then there's no issues whatsoever.
Hmm.
Okay. And as far as I'm concerned, if Sega wants to get their share, all they gotta do is contact me.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I gotta do. Because basically, as I've explained elsewhere, okay, because I've gotten people saying Sega is gonna sue you into oblivion, and all these other legal
Yeah.
things.
As,
And
as they say to the guy who beat Sega in court.
well, actually, I didn't beat Sega in
Oh,
court. It was sort
the
of like,
Archie
yeah,
comics.
yes, but it was sort of put the Sega with the Sonic Chronicles. That was kind of like put in abeyance, meaning that the judges felt I had a claim, but since um, they hadn't, it was legal technicalities. That's about the clearest I will get into. But due to legal technicalities, the judges felt there was nothing for me to go after at that point in time, monetarily speaking. But if Sega were to come out, or anybody were to come out with a sequel to Sonic Chronicles, or if they were to re-release Sonic Chronicles, then I would be able to, file a new claim saying, "Hey, they're using my work," And what would generally happen, and this was my experience in the court, is the judges really don't want to go to trial if they don't have to. What they want to see is a settlement, between the parties, which is what happened between Archie and I. Okay, because when all is said and done, when it comes down to is money, who gets what.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, like, in the case of if anything were to happen, for example, like Sega or IDW wanted to come after me, all right, they're free to do so. But the burden of proof is going to be on them to make their case. I'm saying, look with regards to Sega, I'm willing to do the licensing deal, just like, Archie and IDW, that sort of thing. Yeah. But, because I am also offering creators royalties on the reprint books, so I'm doing something that Archie isn't doing, that IDW isn't doing. I mean, if you follow what's happening with Scott Shaw, here's Todd McFarlane Toys. They've made an action figure of a character Scott has created. He hasn't seen Dime One. He hasn't even received any comp copies of the toys, and that he's contractually owed, and it's really weird.
And I think that was kind of what got lost in this whole lawsuit with you, because people say they're for the creators and they're for workers and stuff until it affects something they like, and it's like, guys, how many times did we hear of, like, the Steve Ditkos, the Jack Kirbys, the Bill Fingers, who just got screwed by this industry? You actually won. You accomplished what we say we want comic creators to have. They want to get paid for their work, and then they got mad at you because Archie had a trigger happy reaction to that.
Well, it wasn't just the money. I wanted to be, the credit as well. I didn't want, books published with other creators' names and mine left off when my work was the predominant.
They were
you look at
some of the books,
like the Knuckles archives.
Oh.
You didn't even see my name on any of the Knuckles archives. You saw Ian's, you saw Patrick Spaziante's, you saw Manny Glan's. Where was my name?
And you were basically the mastermind of that whole story, because was there any issues that you didn't write?
No, as a matter of fact, with Knuckles, his first appearance was Sonic 13, issue 13. And we did that. It was sent to Sega. And then Sega decided at the last minute they didn't want that story to see print. So editor Scott Phillips called up Sega and said, well, we'll pull the story, but you're going to pay for a new one. You're going to pay for the cost of, pulling the story off the printing presses, and so on. And when Sega heard, that, they said, no, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll let the story go. So it got printed, and then we thought it was going to be just a one shot. But then a few months later, Scott calls me up and says, we want to do a Sonic and Knuckles special, and he says, what do you want to do with it? And so we figured out the book. There would be the main Sonic and Knuckles story. And then Scott said, here, write the Knuckles stories. And I said, I'd like to draw them. He goes, well, how about you draw one, and we'll let Harvey draw the other. And then it kind of built from there. Basically, whenever Knuckles was coming up, Scott would just call me up and say, okay, another Knuckles story. He felt that the continuity of the character would be best served if just one writer, took control of that. So from there, it was like every special we did a Knuckles story, there was, I would write it, and usually I would draw it. And then there was the 3-parter that people saw in issues 34 through 36. They were originally scheduled to be in issues 31 through 33, but they pushed back the release of the Knuckles miniseries by 3 months. So that's why I had to do this dance with 2-pagers in 31 through 33, and the story that was leading into the miniseries, was in 34 through 36. So everything built from there. And then once we got the word, or I got the word that they wanted to do another Knuckles miniseries, I came up with what became Knuckles the Dark Legion. And they told me, we're going to do a series of miniseries. You do 3 issues of Knuckles, then we do a Sonic Super Special, then we do another 3 issues of Knuckles, then we do, and so on. They would just repeat the pattern. And it wasn't until we got through midway that Knuckles the Dark Legion miniseries that they said, we want Knuckles to be an ongoing series starting with issue 4. But we would keep the format, 3-issue stories and go on from there. And I think it was like around issue 16. No, it might have been issue 10. Somewhere around there, they decided the book was going to become a monthly, whether or not Sonic Super Special came out or not. So.
I see how. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, I definitely liked the Knuckles series. I felt it was better written than most of the Sonic comics, primarily because Knuckles seemed to be allowed to have emotions, where I've heard horror stories of Sega mandating Sonic be not so emotional.
I'd like to address that. When I was working on the book, Sonic or Knuckles, I had total free reign. The big difference between Knuckles and Sonic, was shown that when I took control of the Knuckles book, it had a unified creator's vision, just one vision. With Sonic, you had multiple authors working on it. And because of the deadlines involved, nobody could keep track, what anyone else was doing. For example, I never kept track of what Angelo DeCesare did or what Mike Gallagher did, because they would just come in and out, submit their stories, and that was it. And they were usually just one-shots that had nothing to impact the continuity. And then when they started to get more into the continuity, you had Carl doing his thing, you had Mike Gallagher doing his thing. And I originally, after Endgame, I wasn't even going to be working on the Sonic book at all, and the funny part was they discovered I was so connected with the Sonic book that the next couple of issues after Endgame, 51, 52, the stores weren't ordering as many copies as they were previously doing so. So Justin calls me up and says, we need you to do like backup stories, for the Sonic book, just so we can have your name in the listing for Diamond Distribution. And it worked. I mean, it sounds funny and strange to me, but that's how I ended up, working on, the backstories in the Sonic comic, besides the Knuckles.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and Carl were definitely like the two most recognizable names for that series. Well, that and Ron Lim, but that's because And I've met Ron. He's a super nice guy. I had him
He
sign over
is.
my
He's a
comics.
very nice guy.
But he seems not. His art did not really agree with the Sonic comic.
Well,
Like,
it's not that his art didn't agree with the Sonic comic. He was more used to Marvel superheroes. Okay. And, Marvel had collapsed at that point when he came on. As a matter of fact, it was around Sonic 50, around that Marvel went through they went into bankruptcy.
boy, how times have changed.
No kidding. Seriously. And editor Justin Gabri, he had worked at Marvel. He knew a lot of the people that were affected by, the implosion at Marvel. So he said, well, let's see. He wanted to see what kind of lifeline he could throw some of these people. So that's why you got like John Hebert, doing a couple Sonic stories. That's why you had Stephen Butler brought in, because he wasn't doing whatever he was doing at Marvel. Same with James Fry. So we had access to people.
He was a really good artist.
No, they're great artists. Okay. But the thing is, they, were affected by what happened at Marvel. And so here Sonic was a lifeline to a lot of these guys, so with, Ron, he worked on a few Knuckles stories. I inked them. But not everybody can get into, the style that's required for the book,
Yeah, it's a common misconception people have in it. I mean, I'm no artist. I'm more of a writer. I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I realized I couldn't draw, so I changed to writing. But I've written enough reviews for comics to understand, like, look, just because someone could do this super detailed picture and everything, you hand them something that's simple. It's like, oh, well, they should be able to handle. It's like, well, no, it's a different style. It might not be up their wheelhouse. They draw things that are different. Oh, we've got a guest star.
Yes, we do.
What's his name?
Her name, Dulcie.
Dulcie.
Yes, we've had her for 8 years now.
8 years. Oh wow. So my pug is named Lilo and our cat is named Stitch. And we have a chinchilla named Minnie. So
whenever I'm around, Dulcie, likes to make her presence known. So
that's why I've got the door closed. Anyway, so Pub Mechanic, I'll answer this one. Ken has been very clear on X that he will be contacting the other creators and artists about the republishing credits and compensation for the omnibuses, right? Because you're planning more omnibuses for Sonic and Knuckles, right?
Oh yes, I am.
And it's probably too early to really get into the details, but the general idea is that you want to reprint them.
The thing I want to make clear is I have been in contact with several people already, okay? And some people made it clear that they prefer any business transactions be kept private for various reasons. And so, you're not going to find me discussing, what arrangements with which people in any public forum, because that would be breaking confidences. I can't, I can't do that.
It's breaking confidence. It's frankly none of our business.
Well, that too, but the thing is, I have to respect, the people's wishes that I'm dealing with. And so somebody might get unhappy with me, and make claims that, they have no knowledge about. But it's part of I have to live with, I have to deal with it.
Yeah, what's the saying? It ain't show friends, it's show business. the business
No,
the
yeah,
business comes first.
the business comes first, so, and yeah, sometimes the fans, really get into matters that doesn't concern them. You know,
It doesn't
I
concern
mean,
them. They usually don't know what they're talking about.
yeah,
So I mean, I've just because I write reviews, and especially if it's like a review for like a Marvel or a Star Wars or some big franchise, I'll get emails from people saying, "You don't understand. Disney wanted this to bomb," and it's like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Disney doesn't want anything to bomb. I don't understand where that line of thinking comes
Yeah,
from. You
there,
know,
yeah. There's only one time I can think of where Disney was probably okay with the movie not making money. And it wasn't with a Marvel or Star Wars film. It was with a Martin Scorsese film called Kundun, because the Chinese government was threatening to kick them out, their movies out of China because they were financing that. And that might be the only time where Disney was like, yeah, we'd be okay if this didn't really make a lot of money. Because
you look at the bigger picture. Yes.
Yeah, but that's the only time they didn't make The Last Jedi the way they did because they hate men. And like, boy, I didn't know what I was getting into when I wrote my 5-star review for that movie.
I don't understand why Solo didn't do as well as it should have, because I thought that was a really well done picture.
It was fine. It was a very Star Wars movie.
Where I would disagree with
better
you,
if they hadn't like basically shot the movie twice, because there's no reason that should have cost $300 million.
Well, I agree with you there, but in certain cases, I think some fans tend to go a bit overboard.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is when they do these projects, they're not just doing for the fans. You're talking a $300 million film. You want to bring in people who haven't seen a Star Wars picture before. You don't want to just preach to the converted. You want new people checking you out.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of my approach for the Lara-Su Chronicles. I didn't want to depend on just one segment of fandom showing up. I wanted to build from there. So, and I think that's what a lot of creators try to do. Is
yeah, they want you to enjoy their work. And I think this is a very good introduction to the Lara-Su Chronicles. Now, I will say the amount of new pages, because a lot of this is actually reprinted material from the old comics, although the quality of this book was so good. Like, it was so nice to have. It's so nice to know that I don't have to pull out my crusty old back issues to read this story anymore. But the new material was relatively light. It was brief. It really felt like a prologue, and I don't know who the heck this character is. Like, no.
Oh, you're talking about Selma. Okay.
Yeah. She doesn't show up in the story, like, but
no, she does. She does, but she's in the flashback in the new material. You're seeing her in her original form before her change. Okay. There's a lot of details that will become clear as the story progresses. And
right.
as for the shape that the book took, initially I had been aiming to get the app out for this by Comic-Con of this year. That was the game plan. I was working on that, and I felt if I get the app out, then I could think about more material for the book, that sort of thing. What had happened was last Comic-Con, I was approached by a printing rep, and they want to know if I had any projects. So I was more in a exploratory frame of mind. I wanted to get information. What would it cost to do a book? What would be the parameters I'd be allowed to work with? Could I get it full color? Could it be hardcover? All sorts of things. What would the cost be for 1,000 copies? What would the cost be 2,000 copies? What would shipping cost? I I needed information, in order to make decisions to go forward with. And just in my head, for the sake of argument, it's like, okay, here, I want to wait until Shattered Tomorrows is all ready to go. But if I were to do a book, what would it look like? And I saw the material I had for the app. And I said, well, what if I added the full Mobius 25 years later, so that I could really have the audience on board. Here's the story, and go from there. So I was looking at page count with what I had at the point in time. And so that printing rep, sent me, the costs, and the specs for what would I'd be allowed to do. And there had been another printing rep who had been after me for years to go with their company. And so I asked him, well, here, this other company gave me the cost. What could you do? So he came in at considerably less than the new print, than the printer that had just approached me. And I said, okay, I will take a stab at this. Because the quote was only good for 30 days for the cost of the printing. And so I said, well, if I get enough pre-orders, maybe I'll go forward with this. Okay. So I posted on my website, I'm taking pre-orders for this. Here, who's interested? And within the 30 days, I had gotten enough pre-orders that it covered the down payment for the cost of the paper, because that was the most critical part of the whole project, because my friend, my neighbor who lives next door, he has a manufacturing company. And the biggest problem he has is the cost of materials, always fluctuating. Same with where my wife works. They manufacture, technical equipment. Biggest problem, cost of materials, always fluctuating, And so that was what was responsible for a lot of costs going up, in the general population. So I said, okay, if I get enough money, if enough pre-orders, I'll go forward with this. I got the pre-orders, made the payment. So now I was committed to this thing. So I had to get it out, no matter what. And I was initially given a deadline of like January. And I was putting some serious hours in to get book to where I wanted it to look, because I was constructing it not as a typical comic page, where you're doing it flat. I'm working on layers, okay, because I'm thinking of an app. I'm thinking in terms of animation. I'm thinking in terms of presentation, how it's going to play, in the app, as opposed to just on a piece of paper. So I had gotten to the point where January is coming, and I still need a few more pages, but I'm going to have to put some serious effort in. I'm working long hours at this point. And I said, I'm just going to have to sacrifice the app just to get the book out. So I was given a schedule. Okay, I have to have everything turned in by such and such a date. This is what, the next process of the printing, so on and so forth. So I actually was a little bit late, because I kept putting in more and more detail into the pages. And plus I also had to, go back and make some corrections. I had to proofread it. I had any number of processes here to get the book done. And when I got the book finally turned in, amazingly, the printing company was still able to keep to the schedule they had laid out for me in terms of setting up the pages on press, getting me a proof copy, going forward with the binding, getting me, a copy of the book before they went through all the copies. Like, here's what the finished copy is going to look like. And I said, yes, okay, they got my approval. And then they go and bind, all the rest of the copies, then it's shipping. So at that point, I'm in full promotion mode. Look, it's coming, and as I'm promoting it, the orders are coming in. And then once the books arrived, on schedule, believe it or not, because it was amazing how they were tracking the shipping from China all the way to the port of Los Angeles. And I kept everybody abreast of that. So I, once I got here, then I had to fill all those orders.
Yeah. And then like one of your earliest supporters had to have a hiccup and you had to send it back out.
You're the one bringing that up. I was not bringing it.
No, I'll own that one. That one.
I mean, I had to. The thing is, once I committed to doing the book, I was committed, and I would have liked to have had more new material in it than I did, but I was always sticking to a game plan, and my game plan was, it was going to be initially released on an app. The first, what you saw, the new material that's in the book, that was initially all going to be released on the app. That was the game plan. And then subsequent chapters would be released on the app. And then once the entire story of Shattered Tomorrows was complete in the app, then I was going to go to press, print the book. But this came up, quite unexpectedly, and I decided to run with it. And it proved to be an invaluable experience because it gave us a lot of knowledge, especially Bernie and I, trying to figure out where we go from, as far as this goes. This is why we're able to even discuss doing the Knuckles Omnibus, because we've already been through this experience. We know what to expect, so that's what's going to make it possible.
Okay, so are we going to see a new Lara-Su Chronicles book, or is the material on hold until you get that app done?
No. Right now, the app is going forward. I'm doing some more new material for release with the app, but I will have subsequent chapters in the app. Okay. Because a lot of people, believe it or not, they really want to see the release of the app because they don't have any more room to store things or they're more comfortable with digital as opposed to print. So yes, during this process, I've learned there's a sizable audience for the app. And the other thing too, is that, project like this, it's not by Marvel, it's not by DC. So the comic shops are not going to support it, unless there's a major publisher behind it. They're not ordering the amount of copies, like say you're working on your own independent publication, your own project. You're not going to get much support from Diamond or Lunar or anybody else until you put in the work. You're the one building your audience. And by that point, if you've built your audience, what do you need them for? So,
well, there you go.
and the thing is, this showed me where my audience was. This really answered that question in a huge way. Where I was aiming for. I've got people in countries, across the globe ordering this thing. So, Germany, Australia, England, Brazil, Poland.
And they're buying the English copy books.
What?
And they're buying the English copy books.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I buy it.
Yeah, because believe it or not, English is a second language to a lot of these countries.
Well,
Okay.
that's true.
Okay. I've got a Polish translator. Like the app will have several different languages represented in it. Okay. So I have a Polish translator. She speaks English. She reads English. She does the Polish translation. Same with my Portuguese translator, with my French translator, my Swedish, and so on. So I'm looking for a different way of getting the work out there, because the traditional method doesn't seem to be working for a lot of creators these days.
No, I actually read a book from a Japanese manga artist who basically point out how the industry was struggling and how they needed to really think of new ways to publish their manga. But, all the people who are on top don't have any interest because they've been doing it a certain way for so long.
Well, yeah, I'm surprised to hear that. I thought they were doing pretty well,
I mean, the business is thriving, but unfortunately, in this scenario, it's not that different from the way American businesses are run. Like, the publishers do really well, but the artists themselves, unless you're an Eiichiro Oda and have like a One Piece out there, tend to struggle financially and with a work-life balance. So I'll have to look up the book and email you what it was. It was a very, very interesting read. I wish I could remember it right now.
No, I'd love to check it out myself.
Yeah, and actually, this manga artist what ended up becoming like a pioneer by because he had a moderately sized hit series. I think it was called Blackjack.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided to sell it online, digitally, direct to consumer. And he was probably the first one in Japan to really do that. And he severed a lot of ties to take that risk, but it seems to be working out for him.
Well, you have to try something different if you want to make your mark. You really do. When somebody asks me, how do you break into the business? My response is, you've got more tools today than I did when I was breaking in. We didn't have an internet where you could post your work online for everybody to see. Basically, I would submit my samples to the editor. If he liked them, I might get a shot at what was called an inventory story, meaning they were concerned that the regular artist would miss his deadlines, but they needed something to fill in the issue, if that happened. So that's one of the things that helped me break into the business. They don't have that now. They don't have a lot of things like when I was breaking into the business. So, they can do their comic, they can put it online on a website. They don't even need anybody to create the website. They can do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Penny Arcade, like one of the biggest web comics on the internet. Like, I mean, at that point, the tradition was, you go to the syndicates at the newspaper, they put it online, and now they've got their own expo and everything. Like, it was amazing what they accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but of course, I remember reading a blog post by Scott Kurtz when he asked Jeff Smith what he did to break into the industry as Bone, and Smith's face kind of dropped. It's this is the question everyone asks, but nobody wants to hear the answer, and because it scares them once I start laying out.
Well, yeah, because the correct answer is there is no universal way. Like if you do step A, step B, step C, that you're definitely going to break into the business. There is no college degree that's going to enable you to break into the business. There is no any specific path. Everybody that has broken into the comics industry has managed to do so under their own unique circumstances. Every single one of them. You know, the only thing that would stand out for some people is maybe they knew an editor personally, you know, or maybe they showed up at the conventions with their portfolio and somebody remembered them, or that kind of things. But I don't even see them doing portfolios, you know, portfolio reviews at the conventions like they used to, you know.
You know, it's been a while since I've been to Comic-Con, but I know some people who do draw, and they stopped bringing their portfolios to the conventions.
Well, because you really don't get they really don't get reviewed in a fair and enlightened manner. Let's put it that way. You know, it's the guy looking at your portfolio. He just wants to get it over and done with. He's just doing a job. You know, yes, okay. And you don't even know if the person reviewing your portfolio is really qualified to review your portfolio. Okay. When I was breaking into sending my samples into Marvel and DC, a lot of the editors that looked over my portfolio, they were writers. They had no qualifications as artists. You know, they would just look at something, and if they liked it, they would consider you. And if they didn't like it, they really didn't know enough, you know, to tell you what it was you needed to do to improve in order to be considered next time.
Nice. I see. That's very interesting. Makes me wonder who's been judging my reviews every time I get rejected from the Online Film Critics Association. I hope it's not the HTML editor.
Well, the thing is, writers have it tougher because somebody actually has to sit down and actually read the work in order to evaluate it. You know, and that takes time. Okay. Does the writer accomplish, like, say, in the first 2 or 3 pages that will get the person to turn to page 4 and so on? And if the person hasn't felt that the writer is doing their job to keep them wanting to turn the page, you know, all that effort you put into that sample, that's out the window. You know, with an artist, you know, at least the person looking at the art, they can see immediately whether the artist has some chops, you know, whether they can actually do the job, or you know, they need to look elsewhere. You know, and one of the things that hurts a lot of people when they're showing their work for submission is they show nice drawings, you know, like maybe for a cover or for a pinup, but they don't show storytelling. And if that's what you want to do, you've got to show storytelling, you know, sequential art, you know, not just a pretty picture.
Yeah, you have to share a piece that tells a story and makes you think about it a little.
Yes, exactly.
You kind of wonder, like, I mean, John Lasseter said that he knew he had told a good story when he created that Luxo Jr. short, and someone came up to him and said, I have a question. And he was like, oh no, he's going to ask me about some technical issue. And the guy said, was that the mother lamp or the father lamp? and he was like, oh, I succeeded. I told the story properly because they cared. So
yes, that's what it comes down to, is did you make somebody care enough, you know, to make that person want to see more, to turn the page.
Exactly. Yes. So I've got just a couple more questions, and this first one's going to really, really date me. But I would never forgive myself if I never ask. So I know that online, I mean, you're very, very pleasant in real life, but you have a reputation online for being a little combative with your critics. I mean, you admitted you kind of have to be with some of the things you've had to do. So I have to ask, how did you ever deal with Dan Drazen's reviews?
Oh, Dan was a really nice guy. I've met him a couple of times when I was doing conventions in Michigan, and we had pleasant conversations. I even shared a few things that were going to be in upcoming issues.
Because he could be savage in his reviews.
Yes, he could. Yes, he could. But the thing is, when he was positive, he was really positive.
Yeah, yeah. When he was positive, he actually seemed to be over the moon. Like, yes, it's actually good. I want it to be good. It didn't seem like he was criticizing just for the sake of being a pill.
No, I read a number of his reviews, and I have to say, I felt a number of them were very fair, and he was very positive, especially on a lot of my Knuckles stories. And when he felt I didn't measure up to what I had previously done, he called it as he saw it. And, not everybody is going to like everything that you do. There's going to be a stinker somewhere along the way.
All right.
And the thing is, I was doing a lot during those years. I was writing, penciling, inking, lettering. I even took on coloring at one point, and
working on the Lost Ones on the side, which
yes, exactly.
I actually did buy. I own those. I'm not going to dig them up right now, but I do own them.
Okay, no, but the thing is, I could have been working on a script for Knuckles, this week. Next week, I'm working on something for Sonic. The following week, I'm inking, somebody's pages, and so on. So it was a constant pressure of getting the work out, the deadlines, because with Archie, they weren't the best paying, but as long as you had the work, you could generate a decent paycheck. So that's what it came down to.
I just saw that Dan's website is still online. So if anyone looks up Dan Drazen, this is the website, and he has all of these reviews for old Sonic comics. I guess he stopped at 268 in around 2013 because he couldn't do this forever. But yeah,
he's still out there. I've received emails from him, every now and then. So yeah. He's up.
He was one of the older fans, in the days. I was I think 10 or 11 when I started reading his reviews. Now I'm 39. So that time it comes for us all.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's been over 30 years since I submitted my first Sonic story.
Yeah.
Where's the time gone?
Yeah, look where you're at, continuing the story. And this time you don't have to deal with Archie's deadlines. You can take as much time as you want, although I would prefer it not to take another 12 years.
No, it's not going to take. I've already got 160 pages of script written. So the story is not the issue. It's more or less getting the art done at this point. So but the story's there.
Okay. It's Pug Mechanics. I'm starting to see why I never got a rejection letter. It was my self-addressed stamped envelope to a story outline and manuscript for an issue I sent to Archie for Sonic back in 2007.
Well, no. First of all, Ian was doing everything. Okay, yeah. So they weren't. So Archie has a approach where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So. I mean, I was there 12 years, and they weren't, and this is what caused problems for Ian breaking in, because they really didn't need him, during the time I was there. And it was, the last few months that I was working for under Mike Pellerito, that him and I were, clashing a bit. And I was starting to get work in the animation industry. And I'm there going, why am I putting up with this when I'm getting so much more money, doing storyboards? And I'm there going, and when Mike said, you want to take this kid under your wing, I said, I have no problem with that. I can work with him. And I didn't realize at the time, and I only found out later, when I spoke with Carl, that Pellerito basically, he was the one who engineered why Carl no longer worked on the book. He was looking for any excuse to dump the older creators in favor of a new line of people.
Yeah.
But that's I don't resent it at all, because that has been going on in comics since ad infinitum. Okay, a new editor comes onto a book, they're going to want to bring their own people. I've known editors that wouldn't even talk to me because they didn't discover me. They want to prefer somebody that they pulled up from somewhere and work with them.
And this happens with every entertainment industry. That's why whenever there's like a new head of a TV network, it's like, look, unless your show was like their number one program, expect your favorite show to go away, because they want to clean house and do their own thing.
Well, yeah, that's how they get their bonuses as well. So
right, exactly. And so the last question I have, this one's not exactly book related, but I'm a little curious, to be honest. You made a really big deal about leaving X. You wrote like a long blog post how you were not going to be on the platform anymore, but now you're back on the platform. Is that a temporary thing, or what changed?
I really don't know if it's temporary or not. Okay, I left when Elon Musk bought it, and I definitely do not agree with his political views or much of anything that he does, really. He's an oligarch. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care about the working class, doesn't care about, if he can screw a person on the job, he will,
He'll do it.
Yeah, he will do it. Absolutely. So, and the only reason I came back is here I was putting this book out, and I really had to get more involved in social media because I now had this responsibility to get the book out there to the public to promote. And I have to agree that, of the various social media sites, at least that I've worked with, that Twitter has the most reach. Okay, it still does. On the other hand, I see that changing. I'm constantly evaluating what I'm going to do in the future, because on my website, when I go behind, to see how the whole thing's constructed, I can see where the orders are coming from. Okay, and it's usually Twitter. Threads has no impact.
Oh no! Like Threads was like the biggest fart in the wind.
Oh yeah, Threads
ever. Like it was big for like a day or two, and then it died. Like
yeah,
I'd never seen something gain so much traction and then lose it so fast.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised at Instagram not being, because everybody says Instagram, and I haven't seen much traction out of that. Okay, I've seen more traction out of Facebook than I have out of Instagram.
People who gain traction on Instagram are the people who are showing off clothes and food and things like that. It's not really a place for people like It's really not good for me because it's like, what do you do? Oh, I do podcasts and blogging. It's like, oh yeah, you'll fit in right in with Instagram.
Yeah, no. Well, exactly. The other thing is, uh, surprisingly, I've seen more orders come from Sonic websites than I have from Threads or Instagram.
I'm not surprised by that, to be honest.
No, but I'm just saying, that here are these big websites, and you think, oh, you get established on them, and you're able to contact people. But Twitter has definitely been the biggest mainstay, other than everything else. People are just coming on from their own direction. Other than that, they're definitely not coming from a lot of the social media websites. They're coming to my website directly in a lot of cases.
Well, and that's actually good, because your own website is your own protection and everything like that. So I was just kind of curious, because you made like a really big deal about leaving that platform, and now you're on it again. So it's like, well, I assumed part of it had to do with marketing, because
it did, and I had to be, I'm doing this thing. I have to be responsible. Okay.
Right.
People are buying a product from me. I got to make certain they get their order. I got to make certain the product is there. Everything.
And have to make sure they're aware of it.
Yes. So.
Yeah. And as we said earlier, it's called show business, not show friends. So
yeah.
So that's where you kind of look at Elon, and it's like, I hate your effing guts, but I guess we're going to be in business together for a little while.
Whatever. But
that's the way it works, right?
It works.
Yeah. So anyway, Ken, thank you so much for coming by. Folks, you can go to kenpenders.com and buy the Lara-Su Chronicles. It's a very good book, high quality, definitely recommend it. And yes, he's raising the prices of the shipping, because as someone who sells on eBay, I can tell you shipping, gas, and packaging keeps getting more expensive. So just be happy that we're not charging $25 for every.
I mean, I have to get realistic here. I mean, I'm holding the line on the cost as much as possible, but the shipping prices have already gone up on me. When I've established the $10 priority mail shipping price. Okay. And that was a different rate when I started doing it. And now they've raised it, about $1.50 more on me.
Yeah. I mean, that's not insignificant when you added hundreds of copies of books.
No, it's not, so, I mean, I've done the best I could, with what I had to do up to this point, but, I can only do it so long, and now I got to, make some adjustments. And this is one of the adjustments. And this is factoring into like how big the omnibuses are going to be, because, we're looking at, okay, how much is it going to cost to ship? And we're looking at, depending on,
if you ship an omnibus priority mail, you're going to be spending between $20 to $25 per book. As someone who has sold omnibuses on my eBay store, so it's yeah, folks, that's why I ship media mail unless you volunteer that extra money, because it's like,
no, I would do media mail, except that the thing is, you don't have the protection.
No,
you
don't care when it comes to media mail.
Okay, I mean, I'm dealing with hundreds of customers. Okay, I can't afford to keep replacing copies and so on. If it's better if I'm using the priority service, I'm upfront with the costs. People have demonstrated that they're willing to pay. So,
well, if you want quality, you pay for it. That's another saying. You get what you pay for. So.
And well, look at, you received your copy, and I did everything I could to make it as quick as possible for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I also gave you a little extra money for the second shipment because it was like I've been there and it's like I don't want to have you to eat this cost just because someone on my end. But that's because again I have an online business, so it's like I understand the frustration when something comes back and you have to send it back out again, and it's like, oh, gosh darn it.
Well, the thing is, okay, I don't want to get into that.
But yeah, so but I've been there in it, but yeah, it was. I appreciate it. Hey, I mean, it worked out. I mean, you contacted me, and then it was like, well, while we're talking, I have a podcast. You want to come on and do that? So the blessings, as they say. And Pub Mechanic says, by the way, thank you, sir, for your correspondence and guidance back in 2007 when I was preparing the submission. So I guess you were helping this guy with his submission to.
I helped a lot of people with their submissions, trying to tell them. So, people ask me a question, trying to do something like this. I try to respond. I try to lead them in a proper direction. I don't want to see people wasting their time and effort.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone appreciates that. And are you still shopping your film, The Republic, to film festivals?
The latest on that is we're right now got hold of software to up-res it to 4K because that seems to be the standard. We did not shoot it. There wasn't even 4K around when we shot The Republic. And that seems to be the standard, in order to get it online, like various places. So that's what we're currently doing right now. It's all done. I mean, it's all edited. It's got the music. It's got the effects. It's just we have to get the up-res. And once that's done, that's it.
That's it. Voodoo, iTunes, Amazon, here we come, right?
Absolutely.
That sounds great. All right. Well, anyway, folks, thank you for tuning into this this fun little live stream with Ken Penders, creator of the Lara-Su Chronicles. If you are listening to this podcast where there are comments available, we'd like to know if you got your copy of the book and what do you think about it. You can leave that comment below. And if this is your first time listening and you like what you hear, hey, let's make it official. The iCritic Live podcast is on Spotify, Apple, Deezer, but not Google because Google killed another product of theirs. And Ken, thank you once again for coming on to the show.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we'll see you at the movies, everyone.
Take care.